The first of the two items that we're going to talk about is the looming social media ban for under 16s. Now, I haven't been touching it for 2 weeks because, well, I haven't streamed a Just Chatting stream in 2 weeks. The articles we're going to drag from will go back over that 2-week period. So there will be some inaccurate content in these earlier articles, but it's going to show how dynamic this is. And that's a concern on top of all the other concerns, is that we are a fortnight, effectively, back from the rollout of the ban, and things are still fluid. I mean, the earliest articles here are basically a month out from the ban, and they're still adding and removing major platforms from the ban list. Now, I'm presuming a lot of them will have been working internally to model something or to framework something that could be applied if they happen to be added to the ban list. But it's possible that it's not going that way. I mean, you've still got to race to get these things in compliance. So there's a few issues coming along with that. One that we're going to look at is who's on, who's off, and what are the reasons. Two is who's running it, because the e-safety commissioner has been not necessarily in hot water, but has been attracting attention from overseas that she probably doesn't want. And then there's going to be a little bit more of a broader look as what's coming and the impact, etc. So the first one here is which social media platforms as of the 5th of November. They're added in. So in November, the Commission put Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and a number of others that they will be an age-restricted platform required to comply from December the 10th. Now, that statement, that's not directly from the Commission, but it implies that there are going to be different laws for different platforms, and that the law is not going to be universal, well, at least within the Australian context. Will that open the door for legal challenge for one platform to say, look, it's either a blocking trade or it's an unfair law because it only singles out some platforms and not others. It's not universally applied. Well, I'm sure we're going to see those sort of things be determined later on. Twitch was added more recently, and that's going to be interesting because whilst you have laws that are applied to US-based platforms such as COPPA, COPPA, which has to do with how an under 13 year old may or may not access a site or have an account for a site. So, I mean, under 16 versus under 13. Okay, so sites already have means to block under 13s. It's just an extra couple of years. Now, obviously, the discussion is about how mature and whether it's appropriate, blah, 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 blah. Twitch probably has quite a large viewership in the 13 to 16-year-old bracket. Now, I've not actually had the chance to see those demographic figures, but if you go and look at the popular titles being streamed and the viewer counts and go and look at the chats and basically just hang out watching and seeing what goes on, I think a lot of the active viewers, active commenters as well, are probably younger viewers. I mean, there's massive amounts of people watching games that are targeting these younger players. Now, there's obviously a wide range of ages and viewers across all of Twitch, but I think it's going to have, well, I mean, I don't think Australia's that much of Twitch's global viewer base, but if you've got other countries rushing to follow Australia's lead, well, Twitch could very much see a lot of the world's viewership from this age cohort disappear. Well, logged in viewership. Now, that's going to cause issues too, because how do you then track viewers that aren't logged in? How do you, they can no longer, give subs or bits. I mean, not that a under 16 is going to have access to a credit card or anything like that. They may have been gifted them by somebody who has authorization. It's going to be an issue. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to viewer counts once the 10th of December rolls around. I mean, there's already been a couple of significant events this year that has led to Twitch having big variation in their viewer counts. So removal of a banning of a lot of bots, and in particular, which caused a lot of people to lose a lot of viewers as far as they were concerned. So it's interesting. Now, one other aspect that's going to provide, I guess, an impetus for people to follow and do as they're told is daily fines. Well, hang on, does it say daily? Sorry, I misread that. Fines of up to close to 50 mil if they don't take reasonable steps to block young viewers, young users. Now, it depends on how you define reasonable steps. What I've seen from the negotiations and everything else like that, not only are they struggling to correctly identify a platform that's main purpose is the interaction between users as a communications platform, but they don't seem to be able to describe what a reasonable step is. There is a lot of industry fingerprints all over some of this stuff, and I don't know that some of the solutions being pushed forward are that robust. Clearly, people have made a sales pitch, but the effectiveness and the robustness of the solutions for age identification, etc., again, I think we're going to see, may not be in December. I mean, it'd be hilarious if it was by the 11th of December, but we will certainly see, I think, some very high-profile failures coming down the pipeline, and potentially not just failure of age identification. I mean, that's always guaranteed to fail from day one, but also failures of the, loss of personal identifying data. If you've got to verify your age, etc., you've got to hand over valid ID in some format. That's for the sort of people looking to steal identities and whatnot. It's a gold mine. They're going to be after that stuff like, well, yeah. So at the time that this article was written, back on the 5th, we had TikTok being banned, Instagram being banned, so on the list, so 200,000 TikTok users in the 13 to 15 age bracket. And, well, even though they've got an under 13 block, it's still used by people under the age of 12. So, yeah, I agree with the statement here made by TikTok that a ban is likely to push younger users into corners of the internet where protections don't exist. And there's been examples of videos up on YouTube and articles. In fact, the ABC BTN program, Behind the News, which is kind of like a news compilation aimed at primary school to earlier, well, mainly primary school viewers. So it presents key news issues from the previous week, I think, in a format that kids can understand. And they had an article, or they did a thing just the other day, looking at what it meant to go and use these sites not logged in, and whether that was more risky than using it logged in. Now, YouTube, for example, the algorithm is king, clearly, but if you've ever tried to use YouTube logged out, you'd be, well, if you tried to do it, you probably wouldn't be surprised. But if you haven't done it, give it a crack. Log out of YouTube, or log out of Google, and try using YouTube while not logged in. It can be terrifying what comes up. And you realize that because you're not logged in, you can't shape it. The algorithm, whilst it's got means to identify the user in very general terms, isn't going to be shaped or tailored while you're logged out. So you're at greater risk of things. Plus, all the advertising you're going to see is not going to be age appropriate either, really. All right, Instagram. Most used app amongst teenagers 13 to 17, more than 1 million active users. So that's going to be cut off. It's going to be interesting. I mean, yep, that's completely cut off. Snapchat, also more than 1 million users age 17 or under. So you're going to lose more than 10, like, you go, Snapchat's going to lose more than 10% of, well, we're going to lose more than an eighth. So what's that? 12.5%. Yeah, more than 10%. They're going to lose 12.5% of the user base on the 10th of December. What do they say out of the overall user base? Well, they don't for Instagram. So you're getting these companies going to lose 12% of their user base in one day. Yeah, that's not going to have any flow-on effects now, is it? Okay, so growing up, YouTube is banned. However, more than 643,000 users ages 17 and under. So compared to Snapchat and Insta, not as popular. Top platform between 8 and 12. It was initially going to be exempted, but later added it. And again, I talked about that previously about, well, how does YouTube meet that description of a communication platform? Of a platform, the main purpose is to encourage interaction between users. It's not, but anyway. Yep, there's substantial evidence that YouTube is used in education and parental environments. They argue that, yes, it is not a social media platform. It's a video streaming platform. Yep, which it is. The big one is YouTube Kids will still be allowed. Okay, so YouTube Kids isn't too bad. They've actually got advertising on there now. It lacks the variety of content that the main YouTube has. And whilst it's something of a walled garden in terms of the content that gets onto YouTube Kids, you can still find stuff on there that's not that nice. But the fact that YouTube Kids exists is great. But that sort of caps out probably 12, 13. Like, there's not a lot on there for the early to mid-teen. It's certainly more of an under 12 type platform, but at least it's not completely banned. All right, Facebook. Well, okay, 500,000 teenage users under 17. Well, that's not too bad, but yeah, how do you identify the teenagers again? So, and this also comes back to valid identity. I mean, people say that it's been impossible to get major email service mail accounts without valid ID for quite a while. Well, it's just in knowing how to use the system. It's still easy to get effectively, well, anonymous in terms of the name isn't associated with the company on the back end might be able to loosely identify who you are, but anonymized. Now, banning off Facebook, that's definitely meant as a social media site. So I don't have too many issues with TikTok, Insta, Snapchat, and Facebook because of the chat function. YouTube, yeah, I think there's a bit of an issue. Twitch, yep, certainly the chat, but its main purpose is to, well, watch and engage with streamers. There is a lot of content on Twitch that is not safe for under 16s, well, even under 18s. So the sole or significant purpose of social interaction, I mean, okay, it's not sole. So it's significant? Yeah, okay, I'll give it that. So, yep, live streaming and posting content to interact with others in relation to the content posted. Yep, fair enough. Gaming and esport, it's don't use for a lot of things. Okay, that's just a generic statement. Okay, X, Twitter, yep, banned. It's not as popular for the under 16s, but see, this is the one which I think there's some personal history there between Julian Grant and Twitter / X. But the idea that, oh no, it's got prevalence of online hate, well, you can say that about any of these other ones as well. Yeah, no, they've got an axe to grind there. Reddit. Now, this wasn't on there initially, and I don't know, in terms of Reddit's demographics, how many under 16 Australian users there are. If you spend a bit of time on various, subreddits, message boards, really, I mean, Reddit's pure role is for the exchange of, well, it's a message board, really. It's what old bulletin boards were when they grew up. So it is intentionally, well, it is intended as something like that. There is massive amounts of concerns in broader communities and information security people and things like that about how well Reddit and the various subreddits are moderated, because moderators are generally a volunteer unpaid function, but they tend to wield quite a lot of power unchecked, and that becomes concerning because it's unregulated, and even the admins that sit over the top tend not to get too down in the weeds with managing the mods. Now, that may just be the case because there's so much other stuff going on. They're working on it that's not being seen anywhere else. But there is no age verification on the system. No, it's one that I think is, I have zero issues with it being banned for the under 16s. Kick, well, Kick is basically just like Twitch. In fact, very, very strong suggestions. They copied Twitch's codebase, and it's not as popular. I mean, it's been more popular in certain streaming content, but it's there now. It's, yeah, out of the list. And then Threads, which is another meta type thing, although question is there anybody still using it? So to avoid the age limit laws, the platform must fall under one of the exempt classes. Well, you can't change what your platform is. So messaging, email, video, voice or video calling, online games. Well, see, that's the problem. If you're saying that messaging is exempt, yet the problem up here is, well, how you define a social media platform. One of the reasons cited here for content that enables users, including Australian children, to interact with others. So what's the point of messaging? Email. or voice or video calling, which is probably why Discord avoids the ban hammer, and the concern about the user community on sites like Roblox. And so you've got people scratching their head about the ones that are banned, yet Roblox and Discord and all those other sort of things are woeful in terms of what's on them, and yet they seem to be exempted. I don't know what sort of sales pitch they made during the industry briefings and the engagement that led to the commission agreeing. And it, for people who've dealt with information security for a while, seeing things like this raises some severe doubts about the internal processes by the commission and about how well they understand the playing field. So platforms that will still allow under 16s, Messenger, WhatsApp, YouTube Kids. Okay, YouTube Kids, not an issue. Discord, that's an issue. GitHub, GitHub is initially, predominantly meant as like a code storing, sharing. It's a code versioning tracker, basically. But it does include commentary. Not commentary. It allows users to submit comments, but its main purpose isn't that. I don't know of anyone that's using GitHub as a chat channel. Lego Play, that seems a bit specific. Roblox, Steam, and Steam Chat. Now, Steam Chat is interesting, especially if you look at the sort of things that are on Steam. Oh, yeah, Google Classroom, I can kind of see how that would be allowed out. But, I mean, I'm really scratching my head at WhatsApp and Discord and Roblox being able to walk straight through. And, Blue Sky. Now, the type of content that's on Blue Sky, I'm amazed that wasn't banned first. Well, it's just... And this statement by the Commissioner that it's a dynamic list and will always change. Some of the companies, when they made the initial assessment, were very much on the line. It's her being... It's an admission they don't know what they're doing. Because if the criteria of what's exempt and what's not was so well defined, you should have been able to do this list up and have it fairly static for at least 12 to 18 months. Not only that, you could quite then easily point to the mitigation practices that they've brought in. Well, I mean, it's an blanket ban on under 16 users. Platform's not going to change just because of age verification. But they should have been able to give a very clear list of who was on and who was off. And anyone who was added or removed would either be because they're a new service, they've stopped service, or they've been able to very clearly explain or justify why or why not they should be added. So, yeah, now this was obviously a couple of weeks back. That obviously was spread across the various news services. So, I mean, it came across onto the Channel 9, that was the ABC, the one before. So, again, they picked up that Reddit and Kick were added, and this was, again, on the 5th of November. So, obviously, the Commission had come out and given a short list, an updated list. Here, the commercial news is less afraid of pointing out that Roblox has been the target of accusations of sexual predation against children. And if you go and look at Roblox criticism, for example, online at the moment, it's almost all going to be focused on that. Now, they've engaged in very shady practices in a number of areas, but the current main thing that's targeting Roblox Online is the suggestion that Roblox is not doing enough to protect young users of their services, and people are being groomed and abused through Roblox or being taken from Roblox onto other services like Discord, where it takes place. And so GitHub, GitHub. So yeah, the idea that so they've, and that's something that sticks out to people is like, well, you've got this very public mud being thrown at Roblox for good reason, yet the eSafety Commission is like, no, Roblox is fine, but we want to ban YouTube. It smacks of political and ideological reasons, not technical reasons. So, I mean, no changes to the other stuff. Fines, yes. Reasonable steps, I don't think, are very well understood either. And so it's going to cause, again, it's going to be legal challenges left, right, and centre. You talk to child psychologists or psychologists who deal with teenagers, they would argue, don't necessarily say outright, in general, they'd support the idea of restrictions on the use of social media and technology by under 16s in order to give them times to develop. Opaque algorithms and doom scrolling, that's not deceptive design features. It's the content that's a concern. Should be building less harmful, age-appropriate experiences. Yeah, right. When they're not, the Online Safety Act's mandatory codes and standards. It's... I struggle to understand how they determine that Discord does not meet the social media definition. And what you're seeing here's the thing. What they've not added to the list on either side are message boards that have normally been the targets of ban waves or people who are upset with freedom of speech, like 4chan or Kiwi Farms or 8chan or, well, there's a range of other smaller profile. I mean, there might have been bigger profile in the past. Services out there where the content on them is either very, very much unregulated, or it's very easy to find content that is offensive to pretty much anybody without much effort. But they're missing from these discussions. I mean, they've tried to ban them in the past. And the target of how they go ahead, it's just, I think people get upset because they can't control it. Like, for example, when the Christchurch mosque shootings happened a number of years ago, one of the immediate actions that came out afterwards was to try and prevent Australian users from accessing 4chan. But 4chan's self-regulatory method had already prevented the perpetrator from being able to live stream or basically post his content on there. Now, content from the incident made it on later, but it was accompanied by discussion, either by people in support of the perpetrator or in support of the victims, but it was after the event. It wasn't live streaming or anything like that. And what also accompanied then was basically a deep dissection of the perpetrator's life and background and everything else. So if anything, you could argue that it was a net positive what 4chan was able to provide in terms of being able to unearth information related to what's going on. Now, it takes some skill to work out when 4chan is not telling the truth, but in that case, people came out swinging for 4chan. But where the actual incident was streamed and more of the information at the time of the event and just before was being put out was over on Facebook. But that wasn't going to get banned because too many normal people used Facebook, and it wasn't the big scary 4chan, but they were unwilling to accept that the restrictions or the safety boundaries or the safety parameters that existed in Facebook that they thought existed just realistically weren't there. So it's this thing that it's people who either don't understand their history of information security breaches and incidents and all that sort of stuff, making decisions that are going to be extensive. So, yep, there's going to be more changes. Yeah, critics point out, yep, the VPN and a variety of other age gating systems can be easily sidestepped. That, well, they're saying that it's going to be the ban is a treatment rather than a cure. A cultural change, yeah, I don't know. Well, if you go back, say, to the mid-90s, before the first internet bubble, the sort of information and stuff people had access to online and how easy it was to get in and manage that information was, well, something of a Wild West, really. But you learned to be careful. You knew that one click could take you to content that was, well, abhorrent to everybody. But that was part of the cost associated with having free access to all the world's information. Not all the world's information is nice, but quite a lot of it isn't. And then you've got to think that, well, people who have a moral high horse don't tend to match up with everybody else's. And so you have any attempt to censor is going to be opposed by other people who think that it's a curtailment of speech or who have their own moral compass that doesn't agree with yours. So, and again, there was a comment, so there's an opinion piece put out at roughly the same time talking about their approach to things. And, yep, the implied statement here is that this attempt to ban information and everything else is a generational problem, and it's being led by a generation or by generations that don't understand the lay of the land, don't understand the playing field. Can we ban LinkedIn as well, please? I think there'd be a lot of people out there, even older generations, who'd be quite happy to ban LinkedIn. But that statement here, this apparently being from the E-Safety Commissioner, talking about all kids these days all want to be YouTubers, head back into the band room, go get off the internet, go be creative elsewhere. Yeah. The world information era has changed. Yeah. And I mean, statements like that don't dissuade people from the idea or from feeling that this is being agenda driven, that this is ideologically driven and not being driven from a technological viewpoint. It's taking out a lot of good with the bad. So, yeah, I mean, he spends most of this opinion piece talking about how the world doesn't exist the way it did when, well, he was a kid, so I don't know his rough age bracket, but every generation fears the technology that follows it. Yep, comic books, television, video games, arcades, modern music, you name it. It happens. It's there. I mean, yep, there are real concerns, yes, and there are real problems that need to be addressed. In essence, it's an acceleration. A lot of these issues were still there even back then. You just used the technology at the time to access them or to enforce them. It also meant that the impact was a lot more local. Problem now is the impact can be global for the wrong things. And once it's online, it can be very hard for it to no longer be online. So, yeah, it is a knee-jerk reaction. And, yeah, I mean, this guy's pretty much bang on that it risks severely disadvantaging teens. But the funny thing is there's a lot of other countries starting to follow and hope for more. Yeah, I mean, there's... This is obviously coming from the viewpoint of a parent and IT person. There is like I said, if you go and talk to psychologists who are involved with teens, mid-teens, etc., there are key developmental stages for teenagers and kids where having unrestricted access to internet content is problematic, and there is a lack of ability to, well, it's an undeveloped brain, really. Yeah, it's a thing. I mean, it is, whilst it doesn't provide solutions or anything, it's just having a bit of a whinge. It is telling to see that we're seeing these pushbacks starting to appear. Now, as the time went on, as we get more time since then, we now have more recently Snapchat taking steps to disable the accounts for under 16s as the 10th approaches. Yep, it strongly disagrees with its inclusion on the list, which is fair. I mean, yeah, look, they're going to, like we saw that user base, it's going to cost itself massive amounts of users. They'll comply because if you don't comply, you don't get to provide service. And here we go. How are they going to do it? Photo ID, connect ID via a bank. You see the ones? So photo ID, no, scary, don't do that. Connect ID via a bank. Now, I'm not 100% sure how that works, but if it's using a system the bank that a financial services provider already has, and no new information is changing hands, I can kind of see that maybe being possibly acceptable. Or facial age estimation. That's going to fail. So, yeah, they disagree with the government's assessment Snapchat is an age-restricted social media platform, but they will still comply. And obviously they're going to be asking people things. And this is, as at basically yesterday, there's no change to the list. I mean, they don't have Twitch on there, but Twitch is on there. And yeah, the big one here, Reddit and Kick were both added to the ban, causing some controversy. Well, that's a very, very polite way of saying it, due to similar platforms being excluded. Yeah, it's... I mean, the same sort of thing happened with YouTube as well. I mean, what you don't see there is things like Odyssey or Rumble or BitChute or any other number of... just trying to think what the names of some of them are. I mean, or even Bilibili or That's the Chinese version. There's just trying to think, the Russians have a YouTube, not a YouTube, a Facebook equivalent called. I can't recall what it's called, but there are platforms out there that aren't being listed here, but you're probably going to face the same sort of risks on them, or maybe even more so. It's a problem. However, the focus on what the eSafety Commission has been doing has attracted the attention of US Congress. Now, she's not a fan of some of them, and they're not a fan of her either. This is from a few days ago. Jim Jordan, does it have it? Yep, there we go. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan wrote to the eSafety Commissioner on Tuesday, their time, Wednesday, our time, calling her to testify in a committee before 2nd of December, I think. Well, 2 weeks from back then. Jordan highlighted the eSafety Commissioner's attempt to force X to take down videos of the Sydney church stabbing. That was the one where the Orthodox bishop got stabbed in the eye and claimed Inman had colluded with pro-censorship entities in the United States. Now, it's one thing to say, look, don't show this to Australian users because it's illegal under Australian law. It's another thing to demand a global takedown when it is content that it is, maybe it's disgusting and awful to look at, but it's content which is not illegal in those countries. It's one of the reasons why things like sites like Pirate Bay continue to exist, because they have, I think they're sometimes described as digital safe havens, locations or hosting locations globally where local laws allow them to exist. Now, depending on how big a country's chasing after you, a few more pressures can be applied, but in this case, it's the US looking at Australia saying, what do you mean ban this? Now, it wasn't a pleasant thing to look at, and the suggestion was that by allowing this content to stay up, it encouraged radicalization or revenge behavior. I thought, well, that happens globally. But the point being that, take it down. No one should see it. We need to control the narrative on it. Using that same line of reasoning, no one would have ever found out what happened in Charlotte. The Ukrainian refugee Irina, I forget her last name, was brutally stabbed. That would never have come to light because somebody like this would have said, no, we can't allow that to be shown. It's brutal. It's not the sort of thing people should go searching out for validation. But 5 or 10 minutes on any social media platform or any media platform, you're going to turn up content that is just as horrifically violent. A lot of the times it's done remotely. All this battlefield footage from, a lot of places through the Middle East and Ukraine and everywhere else. Depends on what message you're trying to send with it, whether someone's going to try and get you to take it down. So, yeah. So here we've got the US saying, look, wait a second. Given that it's Jim Jordan pushing it, there's a suggestion it's probably an ideological response. Is it going to be bipartisan? Well, I think there's probably enough people in the US who'd look at it as a First Amendment issue as opposed to a politically driven party-based issue. I think First Amendment concerns are going to win on that particular aspect, especially given that she was American beforehand. And apparently gave speeches in the US, which is expansive interpretation and enforcement of Australia's Online Safety Act, Online Surveillance Act, including your claims of extraterritorial jurisdiction. That's the problem. To censor speech outside of Australia, also a problem. Directly threatens American speech, First Amendment. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. I don't think there'll be any changes to the Australian ban list. No, probably not. Yeah, brief rundown on that. So she's got basically till Tuesday to, Wednesday, our time, to respond to it. It's, information seeking right now, but we'll see. However, I don't know that she's got the grounds to, I may not respond. Well, if she took her priorities properly, she'd have plenty of time. The Commissioner is accountable to Australia's Minister for Communications in the Australian Parliament. Not to the people. So yeah, they basically run down what the incident was. That was the bishop that got stabbed in the eyeball, and they basically told people to take the content down. X, Twitter, only geo-block the material, which is okay, fine. It's a case of, Australian law applies to Australian users. All right, fine. Australian users can't do it. But using VPNs, if you can use a VPN to bypass it, there's many other ways you can find it. Oh, and the Commissioner dropped the case. So, if you dropped the case, then the suggestion was you weren't going to win it, and that the compliance steps were appropriate. Yeah. There you go, Irina Zarutska, that's her name. And then e-safety directing this might have a little bit more grounds for achieving it because it was an incident that took place in Australia and affected, I think he's an Australian citizen, but anyway, Assyrian Orthodox too, not Greek. It was carried out in Australia by people who could be in Australia, affecting people in Australia. You've got more grounds to correct it. To then go around and demand that Charlie Kirk's assassination, Irina Zarutska's attack, and a bunch of other things, that you can't demand them take it down. That's not, it didn't happen in Australia. Geo-blocking would be sufficient. Well, I can tell you now as an Australian internet user, half of that stuff was well and truly available on Australian news sites and social media straight away, and for quite a while after as well. So it recognises the importance of news reporting and public commentary. Well, the agency says it has no role regulating opinion, commentary, or political speech, but they are. They're doing it. It's, they're saying, think of the children, whilst regulating opinion, commentary, and political speech. I'm going to move on from that one. But Roblox was considered exempt, but they're going to introduce age estimation using facial recognition-y type things to limit the age to the chat to age groups. I don't see that not working. I don't see that working well at all. Excuse me a second. Yeah, no, that's not going to go badly at all. How do you estimate it? Well, use the device camera to scan a user's face, and then estimating user's age. That's just going to make it easier for predators to basically... I don't know. 9 to 12, 13 to 15, 16 to 17, 18 to 20 or 21 plus. Yeah, so it'll be required from the first week of December. Now, Roblox is already in the exempt bucket. Doesn't need that. But we're already seeing failures with it. SBS article, again, from the last few days, saying from Meta. Meta's already started... already started bringing forward the bans. They're trying to restrict it already, even though it's still 2 weeks out from the actual implementation. I mean, at least they're being given fair notice. Like, Meta's doing their best to say, look, you're gonna lose your account. You need to retrieve your data before it can no longer be retrieved. And yep, Meta is going to say there's going to be problems. Yeah. And that there'll be people who are old enough going to have their data blocked or have their accounts blocked. Yep. So there's going to be people underage that'll still have access. There's going to be people over 16 that won't. So if we just took Facebook away from all the politicians and e-safety commissioners, yeah, so they'll start notifying, and Insta and Threads are already doing that as well. Content should be preserved. Believe that when I see it. And yeah, okay, that's... they're taking reasonable steps. Communication minister, though, those statements from the communication minister was that the new laws will have significant mental health outcomes, trying to improve that, acknowledging they weren't a cure but a treatment plan, give their childhood back and parents peace of mind. Well, anytime the government tries to parent, it tends to not go well. If you lose access, you can appeal the process. Yeah, that's going to go about as well as any other appeal to a social media company. You can prove your age by uploading a video selfie or providing government issue ID, handing over valuable items of personally identifying information to these companies that don't have great track record of looking after it in the first place. Government report in August. Yeah, I don't trust the government to find that age assurance technology is efficient and safe, effectively implemented. Yeah. Age verification technology is a pretty significant shift to surveillance. Oh, yes, it is. Yeah, puts users at risk of identity theft, just what I've been talking about. Nice to see the opposing viewpoints starting to appear. Okay, so we talked about Twitch, we talked about Julian Grant talking to Congress, called upon to testify, they're starting to ban. The broader aspect. No, this is talking about Meta already doing what it should look like as it's doing it. The impact of this isn't just going to be felt in Australia. There's going to be a lot of other places. They're going to be looking for it as well. And the EU, European Commission, there's a lot of people a bit concerned about the authoritarian behaviour that the EC, i.e. the European Commission, is engaged in. We had a look at a couple of the tech-related issues talking about Apple's interactions, usually hostile, with the EC, and how it seems that they make these very arbitrary, seemingly arbitrary decisions to do things. And in fact, there's stuff going on online at the moment how the GDPR Data protection. I forget what the exact thing is, but basically it's the thing that means that you have to click yes, I accept cookies whenever you go to a website. It's in part due to GDPR. It's also to do with data retention and storage. I agree with the need to regulate or enforce the security of data retention and storage, minimize what people take from you and store long term. I mean, a certain degree, you've got to share some information that has to be used to see and do things, but in general, people take far more than they need. And so yeah, there's been concerns about how poorly GDPR is actually working. And so the idea that you got the EU or the EC looking at this, you've got countries over there that have, within living memory, come out of very, very authoritarian states or governments. And so the idea that people are going to be able to start banning speech or limiting things like this should be a fear of people, that there's going to be these restrictions against freedoms that were, well, bought and paid for in blood, largely civilian, over decades. And the idea that, oh, well, look, we're doing it for the children. I mean, think about it this way. The amount of information, or the amount of, well, a lot of misinformation, the sort of stuff that's coming out of, say, the Ukraine conflict, you could argue is not safe for an under 16 to view. All right, so now we're going to limit access to news or imagery from that part of the world because it might upset somebody. Okay, by the same token, we need to still have the ability to access an archive or a news record of what's going on. Because the moment you not look, you hide what's going on, well, you can allow worse atrocities to take place because no one's paying attention, or you basically shape how your population thinks. And that concept, I think, is very, very scary. It has never ended well for a population. I mean, it might have looked okay for a short period, but it leads to horrible privations and bad outcomes, really. New Zealand set to just debate similar legislation. Not a surprise. Yep, so the accounts are progressing. Government ID to age verification platform Yoti. Watch this space for major data breach from them in the future. Users who have altered their age to above 16 in settings will have to verify their age. There's shortcomings and significant margin in error in age verification, as age 16 is globally novel. Well, I mean, age 13 for copper. I mean, it's... Yeah, it is a good question. Good statement. I mean, 12 to 13, pretty significant shift. 18 plus, also a significant shift. 16 sort of like, oh, they're half growing up, but they're not. Yeah, I think it's going to be very messy when it happens.